Hmm? No, Thriller won't be on this list. Hi, I'm Oliver, and this is Deep Cuts, a channel dedicated to music for lovers of music. Basically, I really wanted to do a Halloween-themed video, but I wasn't really sure what content to do because I've just recently collaborated with my friend Louisa from Art Regard and my friend Lewis from channel Chriswell. We've done a podcast which is Halloween related, so I didn't want to trample on the stuff that we talked about on that, so I thought I'd do something a little bit different today. Yeah, I haven't really decorated for Halloween because I couldn't be bothered. Sorry, maybe I'll do that next year. I did get a couple of suggestions that maybe I should wear like a vampire outfit or something, but I've just gone with a jumper. So yeah, sorry, not very festive, but what can you do? So what I've done is I devised a playlist or a mixtape of 11 tracks to make your skin crawl on Halloween this year. And basically I'm just going to briefly talk about my choices and why I think these are some great creepy tracks. It's quite eclectic, but I feel that I've managed to balance out the styles and sounds on this playlist to make it a pretty enjoyable, if haunting, listen. I probably took more time out of my week devising the sequencing of this playlist than I should have, but there we go. I've created this on Spotify as usual, but with the help of the Deep Cuts Discord admin team, we've made this playlist available on other streaming platforms, including YouTube. So please, if you want to have a listen to this playlist, listen to the sequence, then check out the description where all the links will be. We'll also be listening to this playlist in full on the Deep Cuts Discord at 10 o'clock UK time on Tuesday, which is actually coincidentally Halloween, so that should be quite a fun listening party. So if you've got nothing to do, come along and join us. On with the show. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, Halloween. I thought I should begin with Nine Inch Nails architects Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's new interpretation of John Carpenter's classic Halloween theme from his 1978 film of the same name. By all accounts, one of the most recognisable pieces of music in the horror film sphere, and what I love about this reinterpretation is it's all about framing. You know, it doesn't boldly reimagine the ever recognisable motif, because why would you want to take that too far away from the genius of the original? Instead, the two musicians build up this unsettling scape that drops out to reveal that classic melody that's been chilling souls for almost 40 years. The final 2-minute stretch of this track shoots off into an industrial pounding rhythm, very Nine Inch Nails-esque, and these screaming swirls envelop the entire track. A dark and disturbing start to our playlist. Mica Levy, Death. Straight off the bat, I'm throwing you into another corner of the horror film world, this time with a track from Mica Levy's stunning score for the equally stunning 2013 film Under the Skin, a contemporary masterpiece for those of you that haven't seen it. Definitely check it out. The film itself deals with this lonely, strange woman driving around in a van, seducing men, and, well, no, I don't want to spoil it for you. This track, Death, is so unsettling due to its minimalist scape. So the central motif are these glissando violin notes, and behind them this distant bass and snare beats just sort of plod along languorously. The space between the notes makes you anticipate the appearance of that motif once again, something that sounds both horrifying and weirdly alluring. Burial, Ghost Hardware. Now we slither into the world of Burial. Perhaps you didn't think that a track like this would be included on this list. Personally, I think a very important part of horror and Halloween as an idea is the melancholia that you feel as well. It's not just the creeping dread, but also that melancholic feeling. Something that I hope comes across in this playlist when you listen to it. All of Burial's work has a very haunted quality to it. The vocal sampling on Ghost Hardware drifts over the electronic beat, and the bass occasionally roars up like this great beast from the deep. At this point, you should be feeling pulled under, awash with cautiously melancholic and anxious feelings. The Haxan Cloak, Miste. Right, let's push those anxious feelings into overdrive with track 4 of my playlist, Miste by the Haxan Cloak, off of his brilliant album Excavation, which is a very oppressive listen anyway. If you haven't heard this record and you own a car, please drive out somewhere in the middle of the night, turn off your headlights, put this on the stereo, and just lose your mind over it. Beginning with this anguished shout, it's almost like a jump scare actually. This echo happens and it's repeated ad nauseum with these deep drone notes that get introduced. They're crackling and pulsating as the scape begins to glitch. A disembodied voice sings a melody somewhere underneath the scape. You can barely make it out before it just disappears, and it sort of disappears as if it's given into this dread-filled atmosphere that's being created on this track. Angelo Badalamenti, Accident Farewell Theme, At this point I felt like we needed to bring the mood up very slightly because the Haxan Cloak is very oppressive, but not too much of course because this is the Halloween playlist. This is one of the new pieces composed by Angelo Badalamenti for season 3 of Twin Peaks that came out this year. You have these dissonant strings that ascend and give way to the most beautiful melody, which is itself a mixture of strings and synth. That signature sound that's so indicative of Badalamenti's composition. This is a forlorn piece of music. It's brimming with emotion and it never loses its disquieting atmosphere, its ability to disconcert the listener. If you've seen the series before, you'll probably recognise which scene this piece is from, which means your emotions will probably be even more shattered by this track. Scott Walker, Farmer in the City. I love this segue of tracks, continuing on in that vein of almost grandiose melodrama soaked in dread. Scott Walker's Farmer in the City actually ups the ante. His vocal is this operatic moan, something that would probably sound parodic if it wasn't for the deep drone and that stepwise ascending violin line. The subject matter of this lyricism laces the track in even more horror, as it's specifically referring to the murder of Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini, who was repeatedly run over in a car. A monumental track, and you may need a hug after this one. Purity Ring, Cartographist. Yeah, okay, I feel like this segue might jar a little bit, but I felt like we really need like a last stretch injection after the kind of oppressive dread of that Scott Walker track and the preceding Twin Peaks track as well. I was going to go for a track by Salem, which is one of the popular witch house groups, but I felt like that jarred a little bit too much, so I did go with Purity Ring in the end. Purity Ring used to kind of sit on the periphery of that internet micro-genre known as witch house. They're fusing these electronic processed beats with spliced samples and haunting voices. Cartographist is probably the most eerie of all of their tracks from their 2012 record Shrines, a great record for the uninitiated. The glacial electronic beat fizzles around these deep bass synths as Megan James croons, "We'll bathe often in the light of the moon, we'll sew clothes from the stem of our womb." Pretty creepy. Tom Waits, "What's he building in there?" Oh Christ, this track. This is one of the most demonic things I've heard. Tom Waits presenting the story of a mysterious, lonely man living in a suburb who's constantly seen going into his house and working on something. Waits' authorial voice wonders what he really is building in there. Wondering if he imagined or he really heard that low scream coming from the house, the smell of formaldehyde. All the time, the track clatters with metallic noise and the tuning of a radio, the screech of reeds. What is he building in there? M83. Car Chase Terror. M83's Car Chase Terror begins with a woman talking to her daughter in the car at night in fear of this man that might be following the two of them. Probably the most ethereal thing on this playlist. What I love about this track is it doesn't lose its apprehensive quality. You have these eighth note synths picking up as the woman struggles to turn her car on and get away from this man who may or may not be trying to kill them. The track bursts into this very anthemic section, very indicative of M83 if you've ever listened to his stuff before, but it's filled with a propulsive beat and these maxed out synths, and disappears as quickly as it appeared to leave the mother and daughter alone again with nothing but the sound of crickets in the background. The daughter spotting the figure once more. At first, this track might not affect you in the same way these other tracks have, but on repeat listens it really does make you feel uneasy. I think it's because it fuses that kind of almost euphoric synth sound with this horror of this situation, and I really like the way it does that. And so it's not a typical pick perhaps, but I think it really works with this whole Halloween vibe. Merzbow, I'm coming to the garden, no sound, no memory. I knew I needed a penultimate track that really barraged you as a listener, that attacked your senses in some way, unlike anything else on this playlist, so naturally, enter Merzbow, a name you will have come into contact with if you've ever listened or checked out noise music as an idea or as a genre. Merzbow is one of the most prolific artists in that genre, in that scene, with over 200 releases to his name. It's insane. This track initially doesn't attack in the same sort of way tracks off his album like Pulse Demon, for example, does, which is just incessant the entire time, start to finish. But Merzbow builds this expanding scape of reverse samples on this track before letting rip with these awful noise screeches that almost sound like a creature in pain, or a creature in fear maybe, I don't know. At the peak of the track, right before the end, the noise will utterly engulf you before completely dropping out to absolute silence, which I think is actually, funnily enough, the most terrifying part of the entire track. Grouper, We've All Gone to Sleep. Congratulations, you're almost through the ordeal of my bizarre playlist. I had to end the playlist with an artist that has always managed to strikingly deliver music that borders the line between breathtakingly beautiful and emotionally fractured. Grouper's acoustic guitar strums and ever so gentle vocals on this track feel displaced from the world. They feel like they occupy a space with swirling fog and dark corners. She's so evocative with the music that she makes. Grouper's a phenomenal artist, and I really want to include something right at the end of this playlist that was just quite disquieting and unsettling, but in an unexpected sort of way. As Liz sings on this track, "Don't get too lost in dream world. You might never come back." Well, that was fun, something a little bit different for the holiday season. If it's well received, I might think about doing this again in the future. If you enjoyed this video, I hope you check out the playlist and check out the tracks I've talked about. If you'd like to listen to the playlist in order, then please check out the link in the description. There's several different links to different streaming services, including YouTube, so you can listen through to these tracks. That was really good fun, and if you do want to listen to this with myself and some people on the Discord community, come and join us tomorrow at 10 o'clock UK time, and we'll listen to this in full. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.